Welcome everybody to another Monday Night Live. My name's Arden, and today I've got my guest David Hyner. I've known David, or Dave, for 20 years. He's one of the first people I met when I joined the Professional Speaking Association. I knew nobody and he made me most welcome, which was absolutely fantastic, and that's why I stayed and had lots of fun and met some very interesting and funny people. In fact, David's a funny person, but I have to tell you, first of all, he's a brummie. And for those of you overseas, particularly Tim in Texas, I need to explain what a brummie is, because it's not an infectious disease. It's not something you have to be careful of catching, but it is somebody that comes from Birmingham. And Birmingham's only 100 miles from London. And Dave and I have quite different accents, as you'll notice. And I'm sure Dave will put on a real brummie accent for you. And I'll put my Cockney one on, mate, if I can, to introduce you. But David's spoken to 1.2 million people, 700,000 young people. And I really do admire and look up to Dave, because he speaks to people who really need it in deprived areas, to kids who need some motivation and some self-esteem. And only last month, he spoke to 50,000 people all in one go in 30 schools. Everybody was there on the from the school, 50,000 people on Zoom. That was absolutely amazing. Welcome, David. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry I haven't invited you before, but you've been so difficult to get hold of. We've missed you, but welcome to the 106th edition. How's things in Brummieland?
Well, I've had both of my jabs and I've been tested, and I'm definitely a brummie. The best way to describe a brummie is we look like Kung Fu Panda and we sound like a Peaky Blinder. I don't know if you have Peaky Blinders yet in America, but you soon will. Whole world's talking about them. So, but apart from that, yeah, I am actually in my hometown of Birmingham, home city of Birmingham this evening, because I'm at my dad's house looking after him. And yeah, everything's both tickety and boo today, Derek. Brilliant. Tickety and boo.
David, now one of the things I really admire is how you connect with young people. And I did hear you to a group of financial services experts. Tell them how you explained to kids and built rapport with them. Can you share that with the audience today?
So the question is, how do I build rapport with young people, or how do
I think it's the way you described yourself to the audience when we were talking.
Oh, right. Well, the way I normally break the ice and try and get rapport with an audience is by what I call taking the bullet out the gun. So I walk on stage and I stand in front of an audience and I say, I know what you're thinking. Oh no, it's a little fat bloke from Birmingham with a really bad haircut. There's a few awkward laughs. And then I say, I need you to get over that, because it's true. I am a little fat bloke from Birmingham with a really bad haircut. And then I go into this assumptions exercise where everybody makes assumptions. And I think only 4 audiences in 21 years have ever got the assumptions exercise right, because most of us are terrible at making assumptions. We tend to, if we've got 2 voices in our head, right? And Heather and William, if you've got more than 2 voices, go and see a doctor, right? But typically you've got your good cop, bad cop, Starsky and Hutch, right? Starsky and Hutch in your head. I know I'm preaching to the converted here. Starsky and Hutch. And because of the quality of people we like to think that we're on the side of the positive voice most of the time. But sadly, we believe the negative voice more than we do the positive voice. That's the problem. We tend to reinforce negative assumptions, and we tend to play down the positive potential for situations. So I go in there, lock and load both barrels, and have a lot of fun. We challenge audiences, whether they be corporates or young adults, and we try to make it as interactive as possible.
Tell me, is it exactly the same with young adults and corporate audiences, the way you play it?
I present the same information in the same way. The only tweaks I make to my content are references that young people just don't get. So, you know, if I talk about some of the people I've interviewed in my research, Derek, young people don't know those names. So I use up-to-date names or just give the metaphor and the story rather than the name.
And when you did, who did you interview, David, on those on that research? Because I know you did an awful lot of research for your books and your audio programs.
Well, I'm not going to list all 258 of them, but over 24 years, I have interviewed world champions, sports Olympic gold medalists, world record holders, Paralympians, scientists, inventors, academics, entertainers, authors, rock stars, millionaires, billionaires, captains of industry, one Arab oil sheikh, and even one politician. That's don't ask about the politician. Brilliant. But so all walks of life from all four corners of the world.
Fantastic. And typically, what questions would you ask? Give me 3 questions that are different that you might ask them.
Well, I had a friend who, before she emigrated to Australia, was a psychoanalyst. And she said, Dave, if you're going to interview people, ask really simple questions and ask an open question followed by a closed question. Because that way, if all you do is ask open questions, they'll feel a little overwhelmed and under pressure. Whereas if you ask an open question that's really deep and then ask a closed question, they tend to relax because they go, oh, that's an easy one. It's a simple yes or no. So I ask questions predominantly around thoughts and behaviours. In the world of personal development, I found, and again, I'm trying to describe a Brummie's approach to personal development. A typical Brummie's approach to personal development is that most of us tend to assume it's fluffy, woolly nonsense. So when I entered the world of personal development, I very arrogantly and incorrectly saw that there were 2 camps. There was the logic, the system process driven analytical thinking people, and then there was what I arrogantly called the fluffy woolly candles people who just sat in a corner round a candle wearing sandals. And never the twain shall meet. It's either thought and behaviour or process. What I saw in the top achievers I interviewed is that it was a perfect blend of both. Really simple, very effective processes with a level of emotional intelligence that meant they were prepared to think and behave differently to everybody else. And those 2 things combined, that's what enables them to be more effective than the rest of us.
And they were good at getting things done through people, were they? Or were they bullies? Were they psychopaths? Because I understand that 1 in 5 leaders are psychopaths, according to one financial journal.
It takes one to know one, Derek, so it's interesting you know that stat, but I don't see as many as that. But more accurately, I have, in 258 interviews, walked out of the interview and ripped up 5 interview notes, just 5 people. Every single one of those in the UK would be known, and in the business world, potentially globally, 2 or 3 of them. And they got where they got by treading on people. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in, it's like the world of psychology studies sick people and positive psychology studies cool people. I'm interested in studying cool people. I want to know what makes people better. So I'm not interested in people who got where they got by treading on people. But I've only found 5 so far in 258 interviews. They are typically very good with people, although some of the extremes of sport and what I call exploration and adventure, they also tend to be superb at being by themselves as well.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, isn't it? And we, one of the things one of the reasons I kept the chat show going for so long is that the people that come on live typically today are motivated, they're self-development developers, and we're all learning all the time, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, you talk about 4 subjects that you specialize in, but I know you talk about all sorts of things, and you're also very funny. But goal setting is one of your specialisms, and yep. I know you don't believe in SMART goals. What's wrong with SMART goals?
And I'm directly quoting 2 of the 258 top achievers who said the same answer to that question, because they set us up for mediocrity at best. That, and because I'm a skeptic, I did my research. When I realised that all the top achievers I've interviewed were talking about massive, really big goals, one guy even said big, fat, hairy goals, that I thought, well, if the whole world is being taught realistic and achievable goals or SMART objectives, that must therefore have credibility. Where's the mismatch here? I did my research, and a lot of people wrongly assume that the writer and presenter Peter Drucker and the entrepreneur Peter Drucker was responsible for the acronym SMART. He is not. Oh, that made a few of you look up.
Who was then?
The person who was first correctly accredited with the acronym SMART was a guy called George T. Duran. He was a project manager in the United States, sadly no longer with us. I'd love to have had a chat with him. I've read every single thing he wrote, and I've seen, to my knowledge, the only video of him ever being interviewed on the subject. He's globally quoted as saying your goals should be SMART, and yet never once have I heard or read him saying that. What he does say on a regular basis is when working on really big projects, the steps to your goal should be SMART. There's the difference. That's different. There's a difference between setting a SMART goal and steps to a massive goal. This guy worked on multi-billion-dollar water utility projects. He was a project manager for a utility company. Didn't work on realistic goals. He did realistic steps. And so that combined with, and please humour me, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, on the call this evening, out of 200, put up a sign using your hands or something. Out of 258 top achievers, asking them the specific question, how do you set goals? How many of them do you think answer the question by going, ooh, I set realistic and achievable goals? Leaves clues, doesn't it? Not a single one of them so far. Happy for that to be proven wrong so far. Not one of them have ever said SMART, realistic, or achievable in the answer to how do you set goals. And as I said, 2 of them have actually answered that question by going, you mean we're setting people up for mediocrity at best? So I do speak in a lot of business schools, although I have this love-hate relationship with them because half of them love me and half of them absolutely hate me. Same with the MBA, because they're still teaching SMART goals. And I go, hello? I'm like their thorn in their side. I love it.
Yeah, when I was in corporate world, I worried about goal setting because you had to kind of achieve them, or you might get the sack, or you might not miss your bonus, or goodness knows what. So I always set small goals officially and really high goals unofficially. And I just wish people had set high goals and been able to miss them, because that would have been absolutely fantastic, wouldn't it? But
yeah.
Do any corporate set big, hairy goals, or whatever that, whoever dreamt that up from New York, that acronym?
When it comes to corporates, and by that I mean very large companies, they are less and less thinking bigger because they're more about command and control as a structure and an ethos. Smaller and medium-sized companies are beginning to dream a bit bigger, and individuals, like I'm assuming most of us are, we're typically, as we say in Birmingham, bang up for it.
Bang up for it. Yeah, I'm bang up for it as well, Dave. That's absolutely brilliant. So let's turn to kids now. How do you teach kids to set big, smart, hairy goals? Getting 8 A-levels, or no, that's wrong, isn't it? 8 GCSEs and 4 A-levels and going to Oxford when they live in a council flat like I did in Kensal Rise.
Well, the 2 most open groups to our information tend to be chief executives and business owners in CEO peer groups and young adults from high school up to university age. It tends to be the masses in the middle who are the ones who are told what to do that are the most resistant to it, because it means them taking responsibility. So I speak to chief execs and young people the same way, and the way I get them to set a big goal is to first of all do an exercise that clearly demonstrates to them that by thinking and behaving different and using a slightly different process, they get a much better result. And in particular, young adults, I use a memory technique, for example. Many of us have come across in our time memory techniques. I've taught memory techniques now to just nearly 750,000 young adults, and the results have been off the scale. And within half an hour, we can get audiences of 200-300 students every single one of them in that room raising their bar significantly. And so therefore we can put the emphasis on tiny little steps every day of half an hour can massively increase your productivity, effectiveness and output. We've even had 4 organisations, Derek, 2 corporate and 2 academic, test and measure our massive goals process only used as a daily to-do list. The average increase in productivity was 26.5%.
Wow.
So when people, and I can't explain the whole process on this call this evening, but if I was to simply put it as the children's playground joke, how do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. That's what we're talking about. So if we say to people, just 5 to 10 minutes a day for 21 consecutive days, test and measure your impact, I challenge you all not to become more effective. I challenge you all, as long as within that 5 to 10 minutes a day, you eat the metaphorical sprout on your to-do list first. So you prioritize your to-do list, which is, many of us will, in fact, can I ask by a show of hands, who does a to-do list, or be it daily, weekly, or whatever? Most, if not all of us. Now, being honest, and please be brutally honest, how many of you prioritize that list in order of importance? That rings true, about half. And honestly, how many of you will diligently do the most important things first? Notice I'm keeping my hand down.
While people are saying that, I would do the things that become a panic on that day first. Now, that's probably the wrong answer.
Well, some people will do the panic thing, Derek, but what normally happens is that people will write their to-do list and then they'll go down the list and go, I can get that done, quick win. So they go off, get it done, come back, and they cross it off, feel good. They then go, I can get that done, go off, get it done, cross it off, feel smug. We like smug. And then, and I'm particularly looking at Martin here, because I think he knows where this is going by the look on his face. You look down the list and you go, you write something on the list you've already done, just so that you can cross it off to feel good.
Yeah, Martin does do that. He's a good friend of mine. I know that for a fact.
And so at the end of the day, when our time, energy, motivation and resource is at its least, we have the sprouts on our to-do list left to eat. It's such a please don't dismiss what I'm saying as simplistic. I'm really happy for you to say it's simple, because I will argue with everyone toe to toe forever on how top achievers make everything simple. So prioritize your to-do lists and focus like a laser beam for 5 to 10 minutes every single day, or 5 minutes an hour if you can afford that time, on getting the most important things done first. That way, at the end of the day, when everyone else's goal is getting harder, yours therefore can only get easier. Eat the sprouts first is my message.
Eat the sprouts first. Yeah, I like that. But if I'm 16 and I'm doing some GCSEs in 3 months or whatever, and I want to play football, this is taking me back to my childhood, which is much more important than getting some GCSEs. How do I make sure that I do the revision, or even the learning? In my case, was nothing to advise.
That's a great question. And if anybody watching or listening to this now has got either teenage children or grandchildren or relatives of any sort, please, first of all, listen to them. You know, all young people need a damn good listening to right now. They typically look to our generation for reassurance, even though they don't like us. They look to us for reassurance. And because we're scared too, and we don't know all the answers, they are going typically either massively extrovert compared to normal, very introverted and quiet compared to normal, and we will begin to see now more extremes of behaviour: overeating, undereating, extrovert, introvert, and we're going to see this because they're scared. Now, they're scared, Derek, when it comes to setting big goals, especially towards their exams. So what I get young people to do is, so Derek, let's just say you're a student. Here we go. This is going back a while, I know. Can you remember slates, chalk, and all the rest of it?
There's a lot of talk and chalk. Yeah, certainly.
And so name me a subject that was your nemesis. What was your nemesis subject? Your Achilles heel. What was the one you really just didn't think you could do?
Maths.
Me too. Now, when I say this to students and say, what within maths is the problem? Typically they say all of it. And I go, no, 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 no. What's 1 add 1? I go, 2. So, so you can add. And what we find is there's normally just 1 or 2 things. Now, for me, it was algebra and fractions.
Me too. Me
To
too.
this day, I still cannot do fractions. Someone on this call here today could teach me fractions in 10 minutes. So what I get them to do is for 10 days, for 5 to 10 minutes a day, get them to what I say, go Rhino at it. So they must charge for 5 to 10 minutes a day relentlessly with everything they've got at trying to smash that fear of fractions or algebra or whatever it is. Because if they do that, and I urge them to accept the fact that for the first 2, maybe 3 days, they will fail, get upset, angry, frustrated, and want to walk away. But they must commit for 10 days. In 21 years, I'm yet to have a student come back and say that didn't work. Flipped to that, I have got hundreds of examples of students. What my favourite is of a little kid called Matthew in Manchester who looked like a mini me, short, chubby guy, rosy cheeks, and a wicked haircut. Side parting done with an axe. And he used to have panic attacks every time maths was even mentioned in class. Seriously, he had to leave the room. And I said, what is it in maths? He went, everything. I went, no, 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 same story. Turns out the thing that absolutely stumped him was multiplying decimals. And I said, so other stuff's okay? Yeah, yeah, yeah. He says, but they're probably going to do multiplying decimals. I said, okay, will you do 10 minutes a day for 21 days, smash it? I said, yeah. I said, will you accept the fact that you're going to get really cheesed off? You're going to want to walk away first 2 or 3 days. You're probably going to fail. He says, yeah, yeah, yeah. 21 days, 10 minutes a day, go. 21 days later, I have a video of young Matthew sitting in the head teacher's office. Now, I'm sure you were much better behaved than I, but if anyone can remember ever being sent to the head teacher's office in school, it was never for a good thing. So he was under stress already. This young lad smashes 10 multiplying decimal questions, and then him and the head teacher look into the video camera and go, Rhino. And this kid, it changed his life. Now, that is quite a bold statement, but that is his parents' words, not mine. It changed his life because it made him just flip from I can't, it can't be done, it's impossible, I get panic attacks, to 5 to 10 minutes a day, I can do whatever I set my mind to. And do you know what? Every single one of us can do the same. With respect to every single one of us on this call this evening, we're playing at it regardless of the level of success that we've already experienced in our life. We play at it. We deliberately seek safety, comfort, security, instead of going a little bit rhinoceros and having a bit of a charge at things. 3% is the average, according to 2.5 to 3% of the time, every single one of us have excelled. We have done things that other people and sometimes ourselves would never have dreamt possible of achieving. But that's 2 to 3% of the time. The rest of the time, we allow ourselves the luxury of mediocrity because it's easy.
David, you're very funny. I always laugh when I watch you. I could hear you speak 20 times. Come on, what's this Rhino? I've seen a few slides of Rhino when you've been presenting to big audiences. Where did you get that from?
There's an American author called Scott Alexander who wrote a book called Rhinoceros Success. I dismissed it several times as fluffy, woolly nonsense because that's what I did back then. It sold millions and millions of books. It was a story about cows and rhinos. It was only when I interviewed the positive psychologists, the pioneers of that industry, and all of their research validated Scott Alexander's book, and yet none of them had ever heard of him or read the book. So there was a link. And what Scott suggested is that in the book is that there's 2 to 3% of the population who naturally behave like rhinos. See what they want, go. They're not elephants. They don't tread on people to get where they're going in a straight line. Rhinoceros charge at goals, typically Land Rovers and Jeeps, but they charge at the goal. They're nurturing animals. They're actually one of the most nurturing animals on the planet in terms of looking after the people around them. So they take people with them on the goal. The 97% of the population tend to behave like cows. Now, it's not my intention to make anybody on this call wince this evening, but let's be honest, how many of us deliberately, at times, hang around with the same group of people, family, friends, or work peers and colleagues, because it's safe, comfortable, and easy? How many of us will look out metaphorically in the field over the fence and go, I want that, but I'll probably fail. I'll stay here and keep doing what I've always done. Which in the cow metaphor is chew grass, moo, milky, milky. And that's quoted Scott Alexander, not me, don't shoot the messenger. But he says, honestly, 97% of the time, all of us go for normal, safe, secure, easy. 3% of the time, we're awesome. How about we flip it? I'm not a personal... I mean, you only got to look at me. You know, I'm not a shiny suited, white teeth, matching tie and cufflinks, pointy finger speaker. I'm not one of the guys who, hey, work hard and you too can achieve, and then sod off. You know, I'm from Birmingham. I want to help you with how to from the top achievers. So what cows do and rhinos do is they accept that 3% of the time we're going to have cow days. That's the reality. I'm not going to say, hey, think positive, think Rhino, everything's groovy. No, that's not life. I'm from Birmingham. Life sucks sometimes. And in fact, every single one of us, I bet, in the last 18 months have had cow days. I know I have. The truth is that we have cow days 3% of the time. That means instead of 97% of it moo, how about we go Rhino 97% and just see what happens for a bit? And if you do that, you can thank me with Belgian beer. German Pilsners will be acceptable. But please, the biggest courtesy any of you can do for me this evening is try and prove me wrong. I love skeptics. If you're a cynic, there's no hope for you. How's that working as a plan? But if you're a skeptic, I love you. Please try and prove me wrong. That's when we get our best results. I know, Derek, you've probably heard me bang on about this story before, but it's my favourite one out of the lot. One of the first guys to try and prove me wrong wanted to become a best-selling children's author. His second book was so successful, it beat J.K. Rowling to Children's Book of the Year, outsold J.K. Rowling. He had to give up his job travelling the world with his book publisher, and now 24 books later, he's one of the highest-ranking children's authors in the world in history. And all he did was try and prove me wrong.
Who was that? Who was that, Dave?
His name is Andrew Cope. He wrote a series of dogs for his He wrote a series of books about his dogs for his children called Spy Dog, basically a British Scooby-Doo.
Okay. Brilliant. So the thing I'm puzzling on here, and people will be watching my body language, is how you get this through. Well, let's take the 50,000 students on this amazing Zoom call, where presumably you were sitting in Brummyland with your computer, hoping the kit would work. But how do you get this through to 48,000 of the 50,000 sitting there? Who's this geezer coming on to? We've got to listen to when we got better things to do. How do you get through to them?
It's the whole goal setting process is wrapped into a really, really simple model of a triangle or a pyramid. So earlier I talked about having a to-do list, prioritizing the list. We get people to put the most important tasks of their day or their massive goal list into the bottom foundation blocks of a pyramid. The next important on the row further up, and so on and so on and so on, until they've got a pyramid half full of stuff. The most important tasks are in the bottom blocks, and then we encourage them with the teacher's support to every single week try and cross a block off, starting with the most important on the bottom row. If they can visually see that they're crossing off boxes further up because they're easy, the quick wins, very quickly you can visualize, I'm sure, guys, your pyramid is, depending upon your age, going to turn into either a game of Kaplunk or Tetris. It's just going to implode because it's just not built right. So it focuses you visually, mentally, emotionally, and physically straight back down to the next empty box, the priority. And if you keep doing the priority tasks, your day gets easier, everyone else's days gets harder. And students, I mean, Derek, other than my family, it's what young adults have done with this that's the most thing that fills me with the most pride in my life. I love working with companies and business owners, but young people, they just use it. We have had tens of thousands of students go up by 1 to 4 grades inside 4 months having fun. We have had students, whilst still in education, become British and European sporting champions. We've had 3 become millionaires whilst still in education. We've had one student who was on a 24-hour suicide watch end up not only not needing a suicide watch, but writing a tips booklet that went into every school library in the country and was invited to Downing Street to meet the Prime Minister. And I could go on and on and on. With a good friend of ours, Chris Akabusi, he shared me a quote in his interview. For those who don't know, Chris Akabusi is a gold medal athlete for Great Britain from the 1970s and early 80s. And he says, top achievers should be looked into, not up to. And I went, sounds great, Chris, but I'm from Birmingham. What does that mean? He said, Dave, if somebody's truly outstanding at the thing you want to be great at, don't put them on a pedestal. Life isn't X Factor. Study them, hunt them, stalk them, go through their bins, make crank phone calls, hang outside the house at night looking through the curtain going, here's Will Kintish. No, don't do that, Will. If you do that, say Derek told you to do it. And he said, track down a top achiever who has got the skill set you need, but at the very highest level. Top achievers are fearless at saying, I need help, but they go to the very top people. Most of us are guilty of settling for information from average people at best. That's why we get average information. I encourage all of us to find a skill set that we know we've been putting off getting, that will take us from there to there like that if we had it. It doesn't matter whether it's financial acumen, man management, personality profiling skills. It doesn't matter if it's PowerPoint or Excel, or it doesn't matter what that is. Presentation, go to Derek for negotiation, Will for networking. And it doesn't matter what the skill set is you need. Track down the best man or woman you can find on the planet with that skill set. Ask them to coach you. Just using this tiny little thing that most of us are sitting there going, well, that's obvious. Yeah, how many of us have done that? I mean, gone to #1 in the world on that subject. We've had people become world #1 musicians. We've had people become multimillionaires. We've had people become sporting champions. But my favourite thing, Derek, out of all of these stories, was a young lady in a 6th form, which is, I suppose, like college in America. Sixth form, a 17-year-old young lady, wanted to go into international politics, but she was crippled with insecurity and fear and shyness. She overcame her fear, wrote the letter of her life to the White House. She received a 2-page handwritten letter from Barack Obama, that at the end of which agreed to coach and mentor her, which we have on good authority. She was the first and to date only international student ever to be afforded that. Why? Because she asked. Could you imagine on this call the people we all know, the combined knowledge, skills, experience and expertise sat on this call right now? And I mean this with absolute love and respect. I don't mean it to upset people, but if I do, hey, that's, you're going to spill milk. But we're playing at it.
What's interesting, David, is that so we got 22 people on this call who will influence at least 10 or 20 people in the next month. A lot of people don't realize they will influence them, but they will. But some of us still don't know how to talk to young people. So there'll be some grannies and granddads on here. Forgive me for saying that. I'll probably get shot. Probably people won't tune in again. So at least we'll know who the granny and granddads are, despite the Zoom fixing of the wrinkles, which I can see you've had done and I've had done, which is great. How do you talk to young people? And I see that on your website you've got a book called Big Mistakes That Teachers Make. I'm curious about those two things. So let's take Martin on there. He's a good friend of mine who's from the Midlands, from Leicester. He's got a difficult granddaughter that he wants to talk to, and he's not getting through to her. What should he do?
When communicating with young people, we need to first of all accept rather than understand that they're different to us as we were to our parents. We can moan about it all we want. That won't solve the problem. They're different. We need to understand and accept those differences and communicate in ways that they accept. So if you're very, very serious as a person, you might need to lighten up a bit, because They do not have short attention spans, but we have programmed them for short interactions. I repeat that. We, our generation, have programmed them that way. They do not have short. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to hold an audience of 250 teenagers for 3 hours and then get a standing ovation at the end of it. We've got to work with what's true, but we have hardwired them. If it's one-to-one, I would first of all ask them questions. Just ask them questions and listen. And when I say listen, use the cliche of don't prepare what you're going to say when they shut up. Listen to them. When they've verbalized something to you, clarify what they've said. I'm talking to you here, Derek. I mean, you're probably saying, Dave, this is just negotiation skills. It is a negotiation skill.
It is negotiation, exactly.
So if they say to you, nothing, I'm just tired all the time, say, so you're just tired all the time, anything else? So reaffirm you've understood, is that right? You're just tired all the time? Why do you think that is? Typically, they will say their favourite words, don't know. So, oh, you're tired. Okay. What are the consequences of being tired? Now, they like talking about feelings and emotions. So they will happily tell you how hard life is when they're tired. And then take it out of them and give them an opportunity to metaphorically coach their friend. So frequently, if a young adult is displaying very challenging behaviour, rather than say, so what are you going to do about it? What could you do? I'll say, your best friend, because they love their best friends, don't they? They like their best friends more than they like us, let's be honest. So if you were coaching your very best friend who was just being tired all the time, what 3 things could they do? What would you advise them? What 3 things would you advise them to do? And which one do you think they should do? And then ask them 3 magic questions at the end. And these 3 magic questions would come from something called the Sedona technique. If anyone's familiar with Sedona, it's an emotional intelligence model for letting go of very unhelpful feelings. But I use it in this context. So, Derek, if you were to say to me, okay, Dave, I'll do 5 to 10 minutes a day, I would ask you 3 questions, Derek. I'll say, could you do 5 to 10 minutes a day? What would your answer be?
Yes, Dave.
Okay. So if you could do it, would you?
Yes, Dave.
When?
I'll probably start in next month.
Okay. How will that work as a plan, Derek?
Might not work too well, I suppose.
Okay. So what would you advise your best mate to do?
Start tomorrow.
If I can help you, let me know, Derek. Good skills.
Great questions, Dave. Great questions.
Yeah, so just ask. Questions are always the answer for all of us, aren't they? But especially with young people. And listen. What was it, Covey? Seek to understand them. Genuinely understand them. Don't let it. We need to remember that our generation have royally screwed them over. Yes, they are freaks of nature with lots of quirks. Yes, they are more intelligent intellectually and academically than any of us ever will be. They have been educated better and to a higher level than typically we were and ever will be, especially internationally as well. But they are an emotional lump. They don't trust authority because of politicians, what they've done, banking and finance. They don't necessarily trust financial institutions and pensions because of what our generation have done to them. They're now looking to what's happened with COVID, and they look to us as to what should we do, and we're going, oh. So they are genuinely scared. I mean, the same year groups that I used to go into and just rock it, now I'm having to work 3 times harder just to get them to smile and interact. Just since COVID, nothing's changed. Just how scared they are. So communicate with them. Just show them you love them, and try to serve them. Serve them as best as we can. And tell them your mistakes before you tell them your successes. They trust people who are not real. Sorry, who are not shiny. They don't trust the shiny suited, pointy fingered speaker. They don't trust the gold medal athlete in a tracksuit waving 4 gold medals, because to them that's lovely, but it's unattainable for them. They want to see people like us who have fallen over, and to use my childhood expression, we've had scabby knees a few times, and we've got better, and we've had a few successes, we've had a few knockbacks, but we need to be courageous enough to tell them our mistakes and our failings as well.
Dave, one last question before we're nearly out of time. I can see Martin thinking, but yeah, my granddaughter's always on her phone, always on social media, to her friends on Facebook. How do I stop her doing that? And I don't even understand how to work Facebook. Forgive me, Martin, if it's not true, but I think it is.
But you don't try and stop her, because that is a generation's way of communicating. As much as we don't like it, that is the way it's happening. It may take another generation before it goes back to human interaction again. But the one thing Martin could do, hypothetically, Martin, would be talk to her on the phone, message her, do a TikTok video, or if genuine, and it's got to be sincere, this last one, it's got to be sincere. If any of us do this from a place of insincerity or manipulation, you will be spotted as a fake a mile off. But genuinely, if there is something a young adult can do to help you, ask them for their help.
Wow, yeah.
Ask them for their help. They want to feel valued and appreciated. They don't want to be talked at. They want to be listened to and appreciated. So ask for their help.
Fantastic. David Hyner, thank you so much for joining me and giving us all those tips. It's given us a lot of things to think about. Tell me, David, how do people get hold of you if they want to get any more information?
I'm over the usual channels like a rash you don't want to speak to the doctor about. Please connect with me on LinkedIn and YouTube if you want to, or Facebook. If you enjoyed this, please do leave me a lovely recommendation on LinkedIn. If you haven't, leave it for Derek. And yeah, that's about it really. davidhyner.com, that'll get to me.
Fantastic. And the one thing I stole from you, David, when I heard you speak, and I'm unashamedly, I stole from you, I do credit you sometimes, but not always, is you said, never be on time, be early. And I've been passing that one on. The way you said it, you say it much more eloquently than me, but actually in negotiating, in life, in sales, on everything, you want to be the first one in the room, the first one there, the person on time, because you pick up so much extra, like we do joining these Zoom calls early. David Hyner, thank you. Will you stay on and answer any questions that the audience have got? And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on the Negotiators podcast, please like it. Please get in touch with David, or please get in touch with me. And thanks so much for joining us.
Sure.